20th.
Hey, g'day, Rudy here.
You bet it has.
Update of,
Trump back in the White House means sweeping reform and, in some cases, the annihilation of the left's sacred cow. From DEI, the U.S. Department of Education, lavish foreign aid, trans athletes and women's sports, even the performing arts at the Kennedy Center, where I'm now a new board member. Now, Trump knows that while business may be, while the business of America is business, in order to affect lasting change, you also need a dramatic cultural shift to occur. For a while now, we've seen some signs of a spiritual awakening, and it's usually happening on college campuses with the revivals. And that's wonderful, but we have to start so much earlier than that to really make a change. And Republicans, going back to Reagan, they promised to tackle the federal stranglehold on education. But it never happened until Trump.
Back too much down into here.
We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. Absolutely, it's going to work.
Now, since the department was established, we've spent $3 trillion on education. And the results? Are not good. Poor test performance, less proficiency in reading and math. We've done a huge disservice to our kids. Of course, Democrats prefer it that way. They prefer the status quo.
To prove itself.
Because sadly, most of them don't care if our kids aren't learning. As long as the propaganda machines, their propaganda machines, continue to hum. As long as their educrat supporters are well paid to develop programs that don't educate our kids. Of course, liberals can't really defend the Department of Education's report card. That's really difficult. But they can work themselves into a frenzy for a crowd.
We are here together because an extreme concentration of power and corruption is taking over this country like never before. I want you to look at every level of office around and support brawlers who fight, because those are the ones who can actually win against Republicans.
Yes, that's a 2028 contender, my friends, spouting typical squad nonsense. And speaking of nonsense,
our job is not to destroy public education. It is to significantly improve it.
Nobody wants this. Nobody in America wants the destruction of public education.
Taking a chainsaw to the Department of Education and undermining its mission to educate our next generation would be horrible for our schools, our families, the children.
Of course, that's all of it. Everything they said is preposterous.
It's not just the money, it's the control, how those dollars are spent. This isn't just a MAGA idea, guys. This is empowering parents, teachers, that better communication at the local level, driving curriculum at a localized level for the needs of that community.
Think about it. Why is that a threat to the left? Because they want states and school boards and parents and textbook publishers to have as little control over children's education as humanly possible. And it's not just that. They need the gravy train to keep their members fat and happy. Now, if you're like me, you get tired of your kids having to miss school because teachers take what's called a professional development day. Now, why do they take professional development days? Because the Department of Education sends $2 billion a year to the states to fund these sessions. Now, it beats having to teach kids who can't read how to read. But today is a milestone.
1,500 stocks across
For decades, the Department of Education belonged lock, stock, and barrel to the left. Well, that's over. With his executive order, President Trump delivered a major blow to the liberal monopoly on the culture.
That's pretty bullish chart.
And a few smart Democrats left in the party will watch and learn as the crazies who make the headlines and get the clicks will just keep spitting into the headwinds.
I just want to wait and
that's the angle.
Fall down.
Joining me now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor, you said earlier this week that dismantling the Department of Education would usher in a new era of American educational excellence. How so?
Well, think about what we've had to deal with in Florida. So 4 years ago, we led on the issue of women's sports, as we typically lead. So we said we're going to protect women's sports. The Biden administration, through their Department of Education, responded by threatening to take away school lunch money for poor kids. And so what this bureaucracy has done over the years, that they try to get involved in fashioning education policies in ways that the Constitution never intended. So let us make the decisions on education. We're obviously going to approach it much different in Florida than California. I mean, we have universal school choice. We have paycheck protection for teacher union dues, and many of our unions are now being decertified because a lot of teachers don't want to write the check. We also don't have woke in our curriculum. We do civics. We do a lot of different things, and it's proven to be successful.
But you were able to do that with the Department of Education in existence, so aren't you making a point that contradicts the need to do much with it?
What they want to do is they want to attach different strings to money, and a lot of that money doesn't even go to the state. It goes directly to school districts, and so they will be working with school districts, sometimes liberal school districts, against state policy. So we're having to do all these fights for no reason. Take the money, and the president made the point today, you can do a fraction of the money, send it to us. The dollars will go farther because we're cutting out the bureaucracy.
Randy Weingarten, good friend of yours, Teachers Union chief, was poo-pooing this idea that the Department of Education controls the state.
So that's what I'm noticing is everything outside, outside of Australia and the US.
In fact, it's the states that control schools. So if President Trump doesn't like what's happening in education, it's the states and local school boards that do it.
Well, she got her hair done. So what of that?
Well, I mean, you've been around, you understand. When you are sending money, you condition the money to certain behavior. Now, we fought against that in Florida, but we also have the wherewithal to do it because our economy's grown 30% just since I've been governor. We've got a big surplus, but not every state is in that situation. And whatever they've done thus far, which has been intrusive, they will do more in the future. And so we know this just hasn't worked.